I ask that you remain non-violent as these issues play out.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you there. I was just brushing up on my signed copy of The UUR by Dr. Ricken Laszlo Hale, PhD. What is up, refiners? It's your innie miscellaneous Gab back with another Severance video. Today we will be searching for hidden clues, if there truly are any, in the book excerpt of The UUR. Now, similar to the Lexington Letter, AppleTV released an excerpt, both written and audiobook, of The UUR, narrated by Ricken himself, as a way to whet our appetite with the first 8 chapters of his book. Now, let me start this video by saying that there are a lot of Ricken theories out there. There's a theory that Ricken is Dieter. There's a theory that Ricken and Mr. Drummond are related. There's a theory that Ricken is severed. There's a theory that Ricken is the mastermind behind everything. There's a theory that Ricken is Kier himself. I really think that Ricken could potentially end up to just be a doofus. So that's all to say that I have not reached a definitive conclusion on Ricken's importance to the plot. However, I will say that I do see a lot of similarities between Ricken and Kier. Kier wrote prolifically about his thoughts on life and self-discovery and spirituality in a way. So does Ricken. He is a prolific writer, and it's all about finding yourself in his own weird way. Now, both Kier and Ricken also have this band of sycophants that seem to revere them to a godlike status. We don't know Kier, but we can see Ricken in many ways is a mountebank.
I wouldn't trust a word out of that mountebank's mouth.
He is a snake oil salesman. He is kind of full of shit. Not only that, but he is dumb. One of my commenters in my last video brought up the idea of the deliberate misunderstanding of Trojan's horse.
It's a Trojan's horse.
And now there could be some hidden symbolism here, but it also could just mean that Ricken is stupid. A lot of people in the outside world are stupid. If we recall the non-dinner dinner party, we see that Mark is kind of the only person there who's like, yeah, it was called the Great War. It wasn't called World War I because there hadn't been a World War II yet, and that seemed to blow people's minds. Not only that, but Ricken's band of followers act a lot like children. They want to be in his good graces. They want to be like, I did this, I helped, I found your child. And we do see a similar vibe with the innies and these blind followers of Kier. Now, this could have several implications. It could be a mere foil to show us that Kier really was a mountebank, and it shows how easily influenced people are, both innies and outies, that in a way our outies with all of our memories and identity are still easily influenced. It's almost like a Dune, beware of the Messiah type of warning, beware of these charismatic leaders, these self-proclaimed gurus, but it also could mean something way deeper. Maybe Ricken's band of followers are innies and they are kind of propping him up to be this next Kier or this idol that the innies can rally around, this reincarnation. You tell me, what are you thinking? Are you thinking that it's just more of a surface thing, or there's something way more profound and deeper towards Ricken's relevance to the plot? So when I first read the first 8 chapters of the UUR, I thought, you know, not everyone who can hold a pen should write. Not everyone who has a Twitter should send that tweet. Now listen, I was a creative writing major in college. I have met my fair share of Rickens. I am very familiar with this personality type, this U-type, if you will. Now, the UUR, it appears many times throughout the first season of Severance. What feels like a ridiculous and self-aggrandizing piece of literature to the viewer turns out to be a profound, life-altering, groundbreaking story of self-discovery to the innies, as well as to some of the people on the outside world. The only people that we see kind of immune from this level of worship are Devon and Mark, and in a way, Gemma, if what Mark in this book says is true, which I'll get into in a moment here. So right away, the book begins with a note from the author.
As you know, the book was meant to release nationwide this week, and I was deeply eager to share its splendors with you. Unfortunately, events beyond my control have led to a brief delay as I liaise with several corporate parties as to precisely where and in what form the book should be released.
This is obviously written before the release of the UUR. The book has been released in its normal form as of Severance season 1. Now, there is obviously talk in the works of a innie modified the UUR. This seems like Ricken's first liaison with Lumen as they're coming to invite him to write an innie-focused book. But who are these corporate parties, and why did they have an issue with this ridiculous book being released? Unless there's some sort of innies going on the Audi, and in a Kier-controlled world, maybe any kind of self-development book, however terrible it is somehow not okay.
I've no doubt this will cause widespread dismay and wrath, but I ask that you remain non-violent as these issues play out.
The idea that anybody would be violent, being deprived of reading this literature for even a little bit of a delay, we see actually a lot of mention of violence in this book, and it's very curious. This could just be a Ricken thing, or is this the world that these people live in, that people are more aggressive, that they are more violent? Is Ricken's ego really that big, or is this a more violent, maybe malice-oriented world?
And that full self-knowledge cannot be attained until you experience the book in full.
Is this book the key to taming the tempers? Is that the full knowledge, that self-attainment? Let's start with the introduction. A book begins. This book begins with a weird visual. It says,
It's said that as a child, Wolfgang Mozart killed another boy by slamming his head in a piano.
Right away, he says that's not true, but asks you to consider the power that an author can hold over the reader, aka how easily influenced are we by the things that we hear? He opens with the central question.
Who are you? For you, my friend, are no mere consumer of this book. Your relationship to this work is far more intimate and profound. You are its subject.
Taken at face value, it's completely innocent, but knowing you are the subject really calls to what the innies are doing, and specifically the macro dat refiners. Are they refining themselves? Are they the subject of their own files? He then goes on to describe it based on the reader's reaction to the whole Mozart piano killing situation, that we fall into 5 different Youtypes, and he asks the reader to take a moment to check in with yourself to determine what Youtype you are. The options are the coward, which means that you would have read that anecdote about Mozart and simply given up, tossed the book away, afraid of reading anymore. Another one is the warrior, which would mean that you got mad at Mozart, you got angry and started to even think about the revenge and the justice that Mozart deserves. The third one is the dove. You were empathetic to the young Mozart. You asked what that other boy did to deserve his head being slammed into a piano. The fourth option is the scribe, the most kind of valuable, where you went and wrote about it. You considered, you pondered. And then the fifth is the vestal, which basically means you are stupid. You don't know who Mozart is. I don't know about you, but when I thought about all of these and considered what Youtype I fall into, I thought none of them. If I would have read a lie about Mozart slamming someone's head into a piano, I would be surprised, I would be confused. I'm not gonna have a stronger reaction than that. Chapter 1 is called Name, Name, Go Away. Ricken's origin story helps put things in perspective here.
Readers of my previous books know that both my conception and birth took place in a small theater behind a defunct perfumery in Western Oregon as part of a 9-month performance art piece titled Smells Like Afterbirth, Fucker.
So his parents were like worse than theater kids. They were performing art kids. Ricken's entire existence was some sort of art project, which you can kind of draw a parallel to the innies, knowing that their existence is some sort of science experiment and or performance art project. Chapter 2 is called Pollination.
My most recent book featured my favorite quote from the late Henry David Thoreau. Every man is a virgin until he has known the touch of Mother Nature's mossy flesh.
Very similar to the masturbating in the woods situation. He then goes on to describe a hike he took with his wife and one other couple, who we can only guess are Mark and Gemma, although he doesn't name them by name. Instead, he calls them Flip and Nan. The hike itself happened 1 year after the Dorner truck explosion. And the whole reason why they got out into nature was because his wife, Devon, was feeling a bit fearful after that truck explosion. He also calls hiking advanced walking, which, like, shut Shut the fuck up, Ricken. He then goes on to compare humans to bees.
I delighted in how they darted hither and thither, thoroughly convinced of the dire importance of their work. How like human beings they are. What makes a funny little bee like a funny little human?
During this time, Flip and Devon were kind of like basking in the sun as he and Nan, Gemma, were reading and discussing passages from Dr. Zhivago. We know that Gemma was a professor of Russian literature, and there's a lot of references to Russian literature, but the mention of Dr. Zhivago is very interesting. Dr. Zhivago, of course, was a man torn between two loves, which we can kind of see with Mark torn between Gemma and Helly. Dr. Zhivago also took place during the oppressive regime of Soviet Russia. All very symbolic as to what's going on now.
Bees, for those unschooled in entomology, are broken into 3 subsets. Workers, who build the hive, prepare the honey, and clean each other. Queens, who eat the honey and live in opulence, and wasps, who fight wars at the queen's behest and defend the hive from bears. As I walked to the podium at Nan's funeral a year and a half later.
He says that a patch of ice on a dark road took her life. This is not a coincidence because the same thing happened to Peg Kincaid from the Lexington letters. She was a bus driver and she also crashed the bus on a patch of black ice. That's what caused her to take the job at Lumen in the first place, and her deal with cars wasn't over then. Her life was also ended in a car crash, and we only see her obituary in the Lexington letter, so we don't know if it was indeed black ice or if it was something else. We just know that she perished in a car accident. Many have drawn some sort of connection here to Gemma and Peg Kincaid. They were alive around the same time, so were they working together to uncover sinister things about Lumen, and were they both kind of taken out the same way? In a way, is Peg Kincaid down on the severed floor eternally severed, as well as Miss Casey? We know that the hike took place 1 year after the Dorner Therapeutics truck explosion, and that was around the time that Peg Kincaid died. Gemma's funeral was a year and a half after the hike, so it's been about 2.5 years between Gemma's funeral and the Dorner truck explosion, Peg Kincaid's death. Then we know that Severance takes place about 2 years after Gemma died in the car wreck, allegedly. Because Devon was frightened of the Dorner Therapeutics truck explosion to the point where she wanted to get out of the city, we have to wonder, was this either a widespread fear of some sort of continued terrorism, or did they live in the city where this happened? Did they move to PE because of it? Dorner Therapeutics said that there was some sort of corporate espionage, that their devices were potentially hacked. So if it was a cut and dry situation like that, why would an average citizen be fearful after that? The poem that he wrote that he took to Nan's funeral was, "Like a bee with a broken antenna, I am now in a sad man's dilemma, for draining my soul is a dark weeping hole in the shape of my dear sweet friend Nan." So obviously, if we are to go along with the rhyme scheme there, we know it should say Gemma. Chapter 4 begins with, "I think we just fucked the universe into existence," which is a quote from our girl Devon, because Devon's freaky like that.
We didn't know it yet, but we had just sired what will, by the time of publishing, be our firstborn daughter, Eleanor Rebecca Scout Hale.
Okay, weird that the kid's middle name is Rebecca.
Everything before now was a simulation. A simulation? By whom, pray tell? I don't know. Maybe the French.
Now, can I just say that Devon seems like a good time, and I would like to hang out with her. Ricken says,
Ooh la la, mon Dieu! My engorgement had abated at the moment of climax, but the dulcet sound of la langue française, even coming from my own oafish gullet, began to stir the ardor in me once again.
He goes on to tell us that he has made love 786 times, so nice. Good for you, Ricken. This chapter is all about sex.
To be sure, the definition encompasses more than mere ejaculative intercourse. I have had sex with Beethoven, Da Vinci, and Twain, often all in the same evening.
Quote, "I first discovered my affection for sex at a young age. My social worker, Mrs. Duft, had fallen into a salmon hatchery pond during one of our scheduled outings." He then goes on to talk about how tight the dress looked on her and found it very arousing. Now, my first question was, why does he have a social worker? Is it because his parents conceived him as A piece of performance art was child services called. He says, life like sex is extremely fleeting, and while we are here, we must dance nude under the moonlight, masturbate ardently, and make love with guiltless abandon. This quote makes him feel a lot more like Dieter here than Kier.
For your 5th addition to the Vanity, I'll ask that you find something you consider sexy. This may be a pinup photo from war times of yore, or a still life of a sinewy gourd. Here again, I consent to my own image being used, should that happen to fit the bill.
So he's basically asking you to add to your shrine an object which you find sexy, which could be a sinewy gourd or Ricken Laszlo Hale himself. Would you rather do a sinewy gourd or Ricken Laszlo Hale? Chapter 5 is a sort of disruptive poem, an acrostic for destiny. Chapter 6 is called What Was That? It starts with a 911 call.
911, what's your emergency? I think something may be terribly wrong. It's all right, just stay calm, tell us what's happened. I'm reading Dr. Ricken's new book, Life of an American Gadfly? No. His newest, the UUR. Ah, I hear it's marvelous. The trouble is, I've just finished chapter 5, and it's, how do I say this? It's a poem.
He expects people to be angry and aghast at the fact that a chapter was just an acrostic poem. Like, he thinks there's full-on riots on the streets, that people are freaking the fuck out because he had worked up a cadence of a chapter, a concept. Is this just a Ricken thing, or is this the world they live in? Are people really this crazy or animalistic or driven by these imbalanced tempers? Homework is to find something that would subvert someone's idea of you. Chapter 7, Wounds Unhealed, begins with an altercation between who we can guess is Mark, Flip, and Ricken. It starts with a quote, "Everyone laughs at you the second you walk out of the fucking room." Ricken says he was slurring, his breath cologned with whiskey, but it was clear enough what he had said. He says, "I was in Flip's basement. We were mere feet apart, close enough to see the veins pop from each other's heads, yet it felt as it had in recent months, like we were shouting from opposite ends of existence. There was a satisfied viciousness in him as he watched his words pierce me. I had never seen him in that before." Now, the whole altercation is because Ricken had given Gemma these throat singing tapes, and after Gemma died, Ricken kind of came over to Mark's place to be like, "Hey, like, I know your wife is dead, but can I get my throat singing tapes back?" And Mark's like, "I don't know, man, I threw them out." And Ricken's kind of PO'd about that. He seems a lot more concerned by the throat singing tapes than his brother-in-law's grief, so maybe he did deserve this. Let me know in the comments, did he deserve this? Mark burst his bubble by saying that they actually were laughing at him the entire time, that every time they played the tape, they would laugh at how ridiculous this was. Ricken says, "I don't blame him for his words, nor would I adjudicate them as entirely true or false." This is low-key like a bit insightful, Ricken. He then goes on to write another acrostic poem using each word in the acrostic as the first letter of "everyone laughs at you the moment you walk out of the fucking room." If I were to say any value that I got out of the UUR, it is this. I think this is actually an excellent way to cope with mean things that people say to you. So if any of you guys leave me any mean comments on this video, I'm going to respond with an acrostic poem. Mark my words. Effervescent, valorous, exquisite, regal, young, owes no money, nice, elegant, light on feet, articulate, uses recycling bin, good, handsome, sleek. Archer, thoughtful, your friend, original, up, up and away, titillating, horse lover, empath, soft ears work well, celestial, ornate, no ulcers, important, dreamer, yields to pedestrians, oily, not great, useful, wellspring, arborist, lo and behold, nightly, ozone conscious, unconventional, tease, operatic, feisty. This book's author, hemoglobin levels good. Essential, fetching, unperverted, car owner, kingmaker, iron-willed, never fear, Ricken is here. Glamour, rah, 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 outlived childhood rival, oxlip scented, my own best friend. He also says, I never did sue him, though it remains on the table. I beg your finest pardon, Ricken. You're gonna sue your own brother-in-law for insulting you. He says, I wish I knew how to help him, and perhaps someday I will, but for now I'm grateful for who I can help. help you. That line is so ironic, knowing that Mark was reading this on the inside and he really was helping Innie Mark. Chapter 8 is called Pull Up a Charity. Ricken says, first invented by Florence Nightingale in 1854, charity has blossomed into a global movement which now spans over 90 countries on 4 continents around the world. Yes, Ricken, charity was invented in 1854. It just didn't exist before then. The concept I birthed that day was elegant but simple. Take snippets from positive reviews of my books and replace my name with that of a group whom I feel is more in need of a compliment. Usually this is the poor, but it varies by case. I then travel to low-income housing projects or shanty towns where I stand outside and deliver these accolades to residents by way of a bullhorn. Get the fuck out of here. So he goes up to poor people and then replaces his own name or his book with a Google review and puts the poor. The poor really inspired me to do differently. He delivers this with a bullhorn. There has been no gesture that is this tone deaf other than the blackface Kier paintings that were gifted to Milchick. Now that is all we get of the You Are thus far. It's a pretty insane book, but knowing that it has widespread popularity is very concerning for the world that they live in. It begs the question, are the people in Kier PE previously severed people whose innies have taken over their outies? Are all of these people like Rebecca and the sycophants that worship Ricken simply previous innies who have now become their outies, and that's why they seem so childlike and kind of stupid when it comes to real world events. Now, because this was released by Apple TV, we can only guess that, like the Lexington letter, it does hold clues and it is important. Somewhat of the mindset that Ricken is a doofus and his goal is to foil what Kier may have been to his original followers and kind of the danger of these charismatic self-proclaimed guru leaders. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you want a Theory Tuesday, or it will probably be a Waffle Party Wednesday release where I talk about all of your theories and mine, which are getting crazier and crazier by the minute. I think one of you guys said at this point we should just not theorize. Like I said, I love the community that we're building. I'm coming out with so much more Severance content. Special thanks to my premium Patreon members, Davis Crushing, Jim Rodney, Chris Bezeski, and of course, Mr. Vaca. And thank you to everybody else who's supporting my Patreon as a paid member. And if you're new, please hit that subscribe button, that notification bell, and I will see you this week, hopefully, maybe for our waffle party, but definitely after episode 6. Stay safe, work hard, and don't get severed. Bye.